all of your gyms still affiliated with CrossFit?
Yeah, so none of our gyms are up until January. So when everything shook down this summer with Greg Glassman, we stated that we were going to move forward solely as Invictus Fitness and start that process. So we did start that process, went through all of the SEO and all of the implications, which are way more complicated than I think a lot of people on the interwebs like to imagine. Like, well, you said you were going to move forward like yesterday, so why haven't you removed everything? You're like, you got 12 years of content on your website. Like, that's a little harder to do. And so we started that process, right? I've had amazing conversations with Eric Rosa. He by both research, contacting references, and then my personal communications with him. He's been nothing but, great to work with, seems really headed in the right direction. So, I was honest and said, like, hey, we're going to see what happens now since the change. But in many ways, we called for the change, we got the change. I think it would be a little bit pig-headed just to carry through and drop all affiliations just because we said that given the changed circumstances. So we're going to see how the year plays out, but in all likelihood, we'll continue to affiliate with CrossFit based on my conversations with Eric and the direction I think he's taken things in.
What would you like to see that direction be? Like, obviously Eric seems like a great guy, but what would you like to see him put in place?
First and foremost, leadership and professionalism, right? We have to get to a place where we can look at the organization and say, hey, like the things that are important to me, right? One being inclusion, right? That we have to be open to changing everybody's lives, right? And there's a way to go about that with integrity and dignity. And so that's first and foremost. I think he's going to do that. He's clearly a very well-educated, well-spoken leader. But the other things are, right, is like we've seen the drop of sponsors and media when all that went down. That's a huge part that will go into play, especially around the competitive piece, but to exposure in general for CrossFit. And it looks like he's doing a good job of rebuilding that. But what I'd love to see is that, we should see brands eager to engage with the CrossFit Games, with the athletes and with the organizations, because they believe in the mission, not backing away because they're scared of the volatility or lack of predictability that they might see from the organization.
Yeah, good points in there, man. I think you set yourself up really well, right? Where it's like January rolls around and you're like, I'm going to move forward with Invictus Athlete. Like, you're fine. You can do that because you have a very, very well-established brand. What would your advice be for, the typical CrossFit affiliate that reaches out and they're like, hey, what should I do? Like, I'm kind of scared. I don't believe in these things. I want to disassociate myself. But if I do disassociate myself, I lose the name, I lose the brand. What would your advice be to those people?
Look, I had a lot of those conversations.
I suspected
back whenever that was, and I'll be really like, maybe I shouldn't, but I'll be super candid, right? There were many ways in which it would have benefited Invictus had CrossFit continued to go down that path, because I got a lot of people reached out, hey, can I become an Invictus facility? Can I, do these other things? But at the end of the day, my concern was with those community members, right? I've got friends in San Diego that own gyms in San Diego that were in that position. They were like, dude, what am I if I'm not a CrossFit affiliate, right? And I'm like, well, that's cool. Then that's why we were fighting for change and saying, hey, no, people do care about CrossFit, so let's make CrossFit right, versus just breaking away and being like, yeah, they suck, come join us. Right. And so really my interest was in protecting some of those guys, right? Because I've been blessed to make great friends in this industry through CrossFit. And I respect that if they're CrossFit, city name, whatever, that's important for them and their branding. Long term, of course, I think that we owe it to our communities and to our coaches to become something, right, that that is bigger than just a brand name, right, and that gives back to that brand name. And in many ways, that's what we've tried to do, right? Like when we changed our programming in 2009, that wasn't to like poke our thumb at CrossFit. That was to say like, hey, this is how we're going to do it because we think this upgrades it for everybody else. And we made it free on our website. And so I would love to think that every gym maybe got their eyes open, like, hey, we have to be able to stand on our own. And if we agree and align in values, then because we stand on our own, it makes the whole thing stronger.
Yeah, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes to that, right? Because it's some gym owners, I talked about it with a couple people. It's like some gym owners use that the fallout of Greg Glassman. I won't even say CrossFit, but the fallout of Greg Glassman as an opportunity to disassociate themselves because they've been wanting to do it for years, right? But they're just like, I don't want to pull the trigger because I feel like right now isn't the time. So I think that gave a lot of people the opportunity to do it and to not get snuffed at by doing it, right? So I think a lot of the gyms that did disaffiliate and didn't come back, I think they were on their way out anyway. They just needed a reason to be out. But good point in like, hey, build your brand, right? It's like you can't count on CrossFit bringing members into your door. You can't count on CrossFit giving you X amount of support because that's just not reality. So I think it opened up a lot of eyes.
I think people are really quick to criticize CrossFit about that, right? They're like, oh, what do we get? I'm like, first of all, you're paying $3,000 a year. Like if you think you're going to pay $3,000 a year and get a, built-in business that is just going to thrive with you barely showing up, like there's some expectations that need to be severely altered there, right? Like, and so I think when you look at it, you say like, hey, what's reasonable? What's reasonable is you should run a great business regardless of whether you have CrossFit on your door or not. And if you love the values, if you believe in what's happening, you believe in the direction, then you should proudly, put that up there. And if you don't, that shouldn't affect your business one way or the other. And I do think it was eye-opening, but I think for CrossFit, it could potentially make our entire community stronger if people choose to do that knowing that they don't have to, right? If you are reliant on that name and you think the $3,000 you pay a year is going to keep your business alive, I think that's a pretty broken system to begin with.